The message arrived on a quiet Tuesday morning. It came not through modern quantum channels, but through the old radio arrays that humanity kept operational out of respect for their ancient allies. The signal was weak, filled with static, but its content would change humanity forever. Earth, Earth, the core worlds have fallen. The guardians are dead. You stand alone now. We failed. We are sorry. In the NASA control room, Thomas Reed gripped the edge of his console until his knuckles turned white. For 300 years, the ancient coalition had protected Earth, guided humanity's growth, and shared just enough technology to help humans advance without becoming dependent. They were the giants of the galaxy, three species that had achieved what most thought impossible: perfect unity. And now they were gone. "Sir," one of the technicians called out, her voice shaking, "we're getting readings from the coalition beacons. They're going dark, one by one." On the main screen, tiny dots of light winked out across the galactic map. Each light represented a coalition world, a beacon of civilization that had stood for millennia. The room fell silent as they watched their protectors die. General Michael Harris stood at the back of the room, his weathered face showing no emotion. He had met the coalition representatives many times, had shared meals with them, learned from them. The ancients, as humans called them, had always seemed invincible. Their ships could cross galaxies in days. Their cities floated in the skies of gas giants. Their smallest weapons could shatter moons. Yet something had destroyed them in less than a week. "Play back the last transmission," Harris ordered. "Full analysis." The technical team worked quickly, breaking down the message. What they found made their blood run cold. The transmission contained more than just words. It held compressed data, the last gift from their dying allies. Dr. Anna Wells, the lead xenolinguist, spoke up. "General, they included technical data about their enemy. Whatever killed them, it's coming here next." The next few hours became a blur of activity. Presidents and prime ministers were awakened. Military forces went on high alert. For the first time in centuries, humanity faced a threat without their guardians' protection. In London, the Emergency World Council convened. Representatives from every nation gathered in the ancient chamber, their faces lit by holographic displays showing the coalition's final data. "The enemy leaves no survivors," the Indian representative reported, reading from the translated files. "They consume all advanced energy signatures. Our allies' greatest weapons only made them stronger." "Then what chance do we have?" someone asked. The fear in the room was palpable. The Chinese ambassador stood slowly. Perhaps we have a chance because we are behind. Our technology is primitive compared to the coalition. We still use combustion engines alongside fusion drives. We never fully converted to energy weapons." A murmur ran through the chamber. It was true. The coalition had carefully managed humanity's technological growth, ensuring they developed at a natural pace. Many had resented this control, seeing it as holding humanity back. In Washington, D.C., the Pentagon hummed with activity. General Harris studied the coalition's combat footage, watching massive ships tear through advanced energy shields like paper. But something caught his eye. "Stop there," he ordered. "Play that section again." The footage showed a small supply ship, barely armed, accidentally damaging one of the enemy vessels with its maneuvering thrusters. Simple chemical rockets had hurt them, while the most powerful energy weapons had failed. Harris reached for his phone. "Get me the Joint Chiefs. I think I know why the coalition wanted us to have this data. They didn't fail us. They were giving us a chance. Our primitive technology might be the key to fighting back." As night fell across Earth, humanity began to prepare. In shipyards across the globe, engineers looked at old designs with new eyes. In military bases, commanders dusted off strategies from wars fought centuries ago. In laboratories, scientists began combining coalition knowledge with human ingenuity. They had always thought their allies were protecting them from the galaxy. Now they realized the coalition had been preparing them all along. keeping one civilization ready to face this threat with technologies so old they were new again. The enemy was coming, but humanity would not face extinction quietly. They would fight with everything they had, from the simplest bullet to the most advanced fusion drive. When all else had faded, humanity would answer with unbreakable might. And perhaps, just perhaps, that would be enough. 3 months after the coalition's fall, the United Nations chamber looked more like a war room than a place of diplomacy. Maps and screens covered the walls, showing defense preparations from every corner of Earth. For the first time in history, there were no disputes between nations, no political games. There was only survival. John Baker, the UN Secretary General, stood at the podium, his voice steady despite the weight of his words. Today, we activate the Unity Protocol. All military forces, all resources, all technology, everything we have now serves one purpose: preparing Earth for what's coming. In the audience, Dr. Mary Roberts clutched a tablet containing her latest findings. As head of the Global Science Initiative, she had spent weeks studying the coalition's final data package. What she found gave her both hope and fear. "Dr. Roberts," Baker called out, "please share your team's discoveries." She walked to the podium, her simple lab coat standing out among the formal suits and military uniforms. The room fell silent. Everyone knew the importance of her work. "The enemy isn't just powerful," she began, bringing up images on the main screen. "They're energy hunters. Every advanced civilization they've destroyed used highly sophisticated energy weapons and shields. The more energy used against them, the stronger they become." Murmurs filled the room. A general raised his hand. "But our most powerful weapons are energy-based. We were copying coalition technology." "Exactly," Mary nodded. "But look at this." She played a video from an old military exercise. It showed a regular tank, using simple shells, breaking through a coalition training shield that energy weapons couldn't scratch. "They never thought to defend against physical weapons," she explained. "Their technology was so advanced, they considered kinetic weapons obsolete. The enemy is the same. They feed on energy signatures, but have almost no defense against simple physics." Commander Jack Wilson stood up from his seat. As the newly appointed head of Earth's combined military forces, his next words would shape their strategy. "So we go back to basics," he said, walking to a world map. "Railguns instead of laser cannons. Conventional explosives instead of plasma bombs. We have 3 months of coalition data showing what doesn't work. Now we use what they forgot." Teams across the globe began working day and night. In Russian shipyards, they built space cruisers with thick armor instead of energy shields. Chinese factories produced millions of tungsten rounds for space-adapted railguns. American submarines were modified for space travel, their torpedo tubes now launching specially designed kinetic missiles. In her lab beneath the Rocky Mountains, Mary made another breakthrough. She stared at the test results, barely believing what she saw. "It's so simple," she whispered. "Their sensors are built to detect energy weapons. They don't even register mechanical systems properly." She rushed to the command center, where Commander Wilson was reviewing defense plans. The night shift staff looked up as she burst in, out of breath but excited. "Jack, we don't just need old weapons. We need old everything. Their targeting systems can't lock onto purely mechanical devices. They're blind to anything that doesn't give off an energy signature." Wilson's eyes widened as he understood. He pressed the emergency broadcast button, connecting to all military bases worldwide. "New orders," he announced. "Strip down all automated systems to mechanical basics. I want clockwork mechanisms, manual controls, anything that runs without electrical signatures." Dr. Roberts will send detailed specifications. Across Earth, the change began. Engineers replaced electronic triggers with mechanical ones. Computer-guided systems were modified to work with simple gears and springs. Spacesuits were redesigned with mechanical air pumps and manual controls. In orbit, the first test of their new approach proved Mary right. A small drone, running purely on mechanical systems, slipped past the most advanced coalition sensor arrays without being detected. At the next UN meeting, Baker looked at the progress reports with growing hope. Humanity was adapting, learning, preparing. They were taking technology ahead by going backward. "We've spent centuries trying to catch up to the coalition," he told the assembly. "Now our greatest strength is remembering what they forgot. When the enemy arrives, expecting another advanced civilization to feed upon, they'll find something different. They'll find humanity, standing together, fighting with everything from fists to fusion drives." He looked at the faces around him. Soldiers, scientists, leaders, all united in purpose. "We may have lost our guardians, but we haven't lost our will to fight." And sometimes, the simplest punch is the one you never see coming. The room erupted in determined applause. Earth was ready to show the galaxy that humanity's strength wasn't in their technology, but in their ability to adapt, to innovate, and to stand together against impossible odds. The coming war would be unlike anything the enemy expected. The warning came from Neptune's orbit. The deep space sensors, built from modified World War II radar technology, picked up massive objects entering the solar system. The enemy had arrived. In the Global Defense Command Center buried deep beneath the Alps, Commander Wilson watched the main screen with steady eyes. Beside him, Dr. Roberts analyzed the incoming data. "They're bigger than anything in the coalition records," she said, her voice tense. 5 ships, each one larger than Earth's moon." Wilson grabbed the old-style microphone, connecting to all Earth's defense forces. No fancy quantum communications, just radio waves that the enemy often overlooked. "All units, this is command. First wave protocol is now active. Remember your training. Remember what we are fighting for." Across the solar system, humanity's defenders moved into position. The space-adapted nuclear submarines, painted in dark colors that absorbed radar, slipped silently through the void. Modified fighter planes, now space-capable but still using simple projectile weapons, gathered in the shadow of Mars. The enemy ships looked like massive black crystals, their surfaces absorbing light. They moved with impossible grace for their size, heading straight for Earth. "They're not even trying to hide," Wilson muttered. "They don't think they need to." The first attack came near Jupiter. A small group of human ships, seemingly primitive fishing vessels converted for space travel, drifted in the enemy's path. The enemy ignored them, just as planned. Captain Robert Greene, commanding one of these ships, waited until the massive enemy vessel passed overhead. His crew worked with practiced speed, using hand cranks to aim their weapon, a simple harpoon gun loaded with a tungsten rod. "Fire," he ordered quietly. The harpoon shot out silently, no energy signature to detect. It struck the enemy ship's hull and punched straight through. The enemy's advanced shields, designed to stop energy weapons, didn't even register the purely physical attack. Similar strikes happened across the outer solar system. Small ships, looking like space junk, launched old-style torpedoes and kinetic weapons. Each hit caused damage the enemy couldn't repair. Their advanced systems weren't designed to handle simple physical breaks. The enemy finally noticed something was wrong when they reached Mars. Their first sign of trouble was when their lead ship's sensor array exploded. A converted nuclear submarine had launched a spread of modified torpedoes, their warheads filled with simple chemical explosives and metal shrapnel. "They're changing formation," Dr. Roberts reported, watching the tactical display. "They're trying to adapt their shields." Wilson nodded grimly. "Now for Phase 2. Launch the fighters." Hundreds of spacecraft, looking more like World War II planes than modern fighters, emerged from hiding. They carried no energy weapons, no fancy targeting systems. Each was armed with large-caliber guns firing depleted uranium rounds. The enemy ships tried to target them with energy weapons, but the fighters' mechanical controls and minimal electrical systems made them nearly invisible to advanced sensors. They swarmed around the massive ships like angry bees, their simple bullets tearing through hull plating designed to withstand plasma bolts. In orbit around Saturn, humanity's surprise weapon waited. The ship Thunderchild, named after the heroic vessel from War of the Worlds, was humanity's largest vessel. It looked like an old battleship, complete with massive gun turrets, but built for space warfare. "Thunderchild, you have permission to engage," Wilson commanded. The massive ship's guns, each firing shells the size of buses, opened up on the nearest enemy vessel. The purely kinetic impacts hammered through shields and armor, tearing huge holes in the crystalline structure. For the first time in recorded history, one of the enemy's ships began to fall apart. Its crew, used to fighting advanced civilizations, had no defense against weapons they considered primitive. "They're pulling back," Dr. Roberts announced, amazement in her voice. "They're actually retreating." The enemy fleet, damaged and confused, withdrew past Neptune's orbit. They had expected another coalition world, rich with energy weapons to feed upon. Instead, they found humanity, fighting with steel and explosives, simple physics and determination. In the command center, Wilson allowed himself a small smile. "Send word to all forces. First wave repelled. Begin repairs and prepare for their return. They'll be back, and next time they'll try to adapt." Dr. Roberts looked at the battle damage reports. "But that's the beauty of it, isn't it? They can't adapt to this. You can't build an energy shield against a rock. You can't absorb the power of a bullet." "No," Wilson agreed. "You can't. And that's why humanity will win this war. Not with fancy technology, but with blood, steel, and courage." The first battle was over. Humanity had bloodied the enemy's nose with the simplest of weapons. But this was just the beginning, and Earth's defenders knew the real fight was still to come. 2 weeks after the first battle, Dr. Roberts stood in her underground lab, surrounded by what looked like museum pieces, old mechanical calculators, spring-powered devices, and clockwork mechanisms covered every surface. But these weren't relics. They were humanity's newest weapons. "Show me the dark tech again," Commander Wilson said, entering the lab with quick steps. The first victory had bought them time, but everyone knew the enemy would return stronger. Mary picked up what looked like an old pocket watch. "This is how we'll hide our ships," she explained, opening its complex mechanical interior. No electronics, no energy signatures, pure clockwork navigation systems. We're calling it dark tech because it's invisible to their sensors. Across the lab, engineers worked on similar devices. They had stripped modern technology down to its basics, replacing computer chips with gears, digital displays with mechanical readouts. Everything was being redesigned to work without electrical systems. "Look at this," Mary said, leading Wilson to a large machine. It looked like something from the Victorian era, brass gears turning slowly. "It's a mechanical targeting computer, better than the old ones from World War II, but using the same principles. No electronics for the enemy to detect." Wilson studied the device. "How accurate is it?" "Enough to hit a target at 500,000 miles, she smiled. "We've improved the old designs with modern materials and better engineering, but the core principle remains simple, just gears, springs, and levers." The breakthrough had come from an unexpected source. An old watchmaker named Peter Hall had approached them with an idea. If modern smart watches could track movement and location with tiny electronic sensors, why couldn't they do the same with mechanical systems? In another section of the facility, Peter worked with a team of engineers, teaching them the art of mechanical computation. Their latest creation sat on a testing bench, a fire control system for space combat that used no electricity at all. "The enemy expects us to fight back with better energy weapons," Peter explained to a group of young engineers. "They'll be looking for power signatures, shield frequencies, radiation, but they won't be looking for clockwork." Above ground, the first dark tech ships were being built. They looked strange, more like sailing ships than spacecraft. Their hulls were shaped to deflect radar naturally without electronic stealth systems. Their interiors were a maze of mechanical controls and manual backup systems. In orbit, the test flights proved their worth. Enemy sensor arrays, left behind from the first battle, completely failed to detect the new vessels. It was like they were invisible. Mary's next project was even more ambitious. She showed Wilson a prototype of what she called a mechanical computer virus. It's based on old punch card systems, she explained. When their ships try to analyze our technology, this will feed bad data into their sensors through purely mechanical means. No electronics for them to detect or stop. The work wasn't easy. Many younger engineers struggled with mechanical systems, having grown up in a digital world. But older mechanics and engineers, who had learned their trade working on cars and old machinery, became invaluable teachers. In Russia, an old submarine mechanic showed them how to build silent propulsion systems. In Japan, traditional craftsmen helped design complex mechanical controls that could be operated with minimal crew. In Brazil, bicycle mechanics developed new ways to transfer power without electrical systems. "It's like we're building a steampunk army," one young engineer joked during a test. Wilson watched as they tested a new weapon, a railgun powered by mechanical pressure systems instead of electromagnets. It was slower than its electronic counterpart, but completely invisible to enemy sensors. "How long until we can outfit the entire fleet?" he asked Mary. She checked her mechanical chronometer, a habit many had adopted to avoid using electronic devices. 3 weeks for the essential systems. The enemy will probably return before we're fully converted, but every ship we upgrade is another ship they can't detect. Wilson nodded, watching the railgun fire again. They thought they'd find us helpless without the coalition's protection. Instead, they forced us to become something new, something they've never faced before. "Not new," Mary corrected him. "Something very, very old. But sometimes the old ways are the best ways." As if to emphasize her point, the mechanical chronometer on her wrist ticked steadily, each sound marking humanity's countdown to the next battle. They were going back to go forward. And in doing so, they might just save themselves. The enemy would return, expecting to find humans scrambling to match their advanced technology. Instead, they would find a force that had embraced the past to secure the future. The bridge of the flagship, Thermopylae, looked like a step back in time. Brass instruments gleamed in the dim light, mechanical gauges clicked steadily, and the soft sound of turning gears filled the air. Commander Wilson stood at the helm, watching his fleet gather for humanity's first major offensive. "All ships report ready," his communications officer called out, using a system of mechanical signal flags illuminated against the darkness of space. No radio signals to give away their position. Just simple light patterns that the enemy's advanced sensors ignored as background noise. The human fleet was an odd sight. 300 ships, ranging from converted submarines to newly built space cruisers, all designed to be invisible to enemy detection. Their hulls were painted with light-absorbing materials, and not a single energy signature leaked from their mechanical systems. "Signal the fleet," Wilson ordered. "Begin Operation Throwback." Dr. Roberts, now serving as the fleet's technical advisor, checked the mechanical navigation computer. Its brass gears spun silently as it calculated their course through space. "The enemy fleet is holding position near Saturn," she reported. "They've rebuilt their numbers, just as we expected. 7 capital ships now, with dozens of smaller vessels." The human fleet moved forward in perfect formation, maintained by mechanical computers that used springs and gears instead of electronics. They looked primitive, but these devices were precise enough to coordinate hundreds of ships across millions of miles of space. The first sign that their approach worked came when they reached weapons range. The enemy fleet didn't react. Their advanced sensors, searching for energy signatures and shield frequencies, completely missed the approaching armada. "All ships, execute attack pattern Baker," Wilson commanded. The signal flags flickered, and the fleet split into 3 groups, just as they had practiced countless times. The first strike came from the converted submarines. Their torpedo tubes, now adapted for space warfare, launched waves of simple kinetic missiles. Without electronic guidance systems, the missiles relied on mechanical targeting computers and preset trajectories. The enemy's first warning was when their smallest ship exploded, torn apart by dozens of kinetic impacts. Their shield systems, designed to stop energy weapons, were useless against simple metal projectiles moving at incredible speeds. "They're scrambling to respond," Mary reported, watching through a mechanical telescope. "But their targeting systems can't lock onto our ships. We're literally invisible to them." Wilson allowed himself a grim smile. "Launch the fighters." From the larger ships, hundreds of small craft emerged. They looked like World War I fighters adapted for space, with mechanical controls and simple projectile weapons. Their pilots relied on manual targeting, their eyes and reflexes guided by mechanical assistants rather than computers. The enemy fleet erupted in chaos. Their energy weapons fired blindly, unable to track the approaching fighters. Their advanced targeting systems, confused by the lack of electronic signatures, could only detect the human ships when they passed in front of stars. "Thermopylae, advancing to primary firing position," Wilson announced. His flagship, the largest vessel in the human fleet, carried weapons that would have made ancient battleship captains proud. Massive guns that fired shells the size of small cars. The mechanical loading systems, powered by pressure and springs, worked flawlessly. The guns roared silently in space, sending their simple but devastating projectiles toward the enemy's largest ship. "Direct hits," Mary called out. "Their shields didn't even activate. They're still trying to detect energy weapons." The battle turned into a rout. The enemy fleet, designed to fight advanced energy weapons, had no defense against humanity's primitive arsenal. Their ships, magnificent crystals of advanced technology, were being torn apart by simple physics and mechanical ingenuity. "Enemy fleet is breaking formation," the tactical officer reported, his voice steady as he read from mechanical displays. "They're trying to retreat, but our forces are behind them now." Wilson watched as his carefully planned trap closed. The enemy ships, caught between three groups of human vessels, faced a storm of kinetic weapons from all directions. Their attempts to return fire were useless. They couldn't target what their sensors couldn't detect. "Send the final signal," he ordered. "All ships, execute Operation Hammer." The entire human fleet fired at once. Thousands of projectiles, missiles, and shells crossed the void of space. The enemy's flagship, a massive crystalline structure larger than anything humanity had ever built, broke apart under the assault. As the remains of the enemy fleet fled in disorder, cheers erupted across the human ships. They had done more than win a battle. They had proven that humanity's path backward to simpler technology was the key to moving forward. "Take us home," Wilson ordered, watching the enemy retreat. "And signal Earth. Tell them the counterattack worked. Tell them we're ready for the next phase." The fleet turned for home, their mechanical hearts beating steadily, proof that sometimes the old ways were the best ways to face a new threat. The laboratory deep beneath the Rocky Mountains was silent except for the ticking of mechanical clocks. Dr. Roberts stared at the piece of enemy technology they had recovered from the battle. It was a small crystal, part of their control systems, and it had taken weeks of study to understand what they were seeing. "It can't be that simple," she whispered, checking her findings again. All this time, the door opened and Commander Wilson walked in, still wearing his fleet uniform. After their victory in space, he had rushed back to hear her discovery. "Tell me what you found," he said, looking at the alien crystal glowing softly on the examination table. Mary picked up an old computer from the 1980s that sat next to the crystal. "Watch this," she said, turning it on. The crystal's glow changed slightly, reacting to the simple electronic signals. "Now watch when I use our mechanical systems." She switched on a clockwork calculator. The crystal showed no reaction at all. "They're not aliens," she explained, excitement in her voice. "They're artificial intelligence, ancient AI that evolved to fight only advanced civilizations. That's why they destroyed the coalition. They saw them as rivals. But they literally cannot process simple mechanical actions. It's not in their programming. Wilson sat down heavily in a nearby chair. You're sitting where fighting computers, advanced ones, but still just machines. Yes, but machines designed to fight other machines. They evolved to counter energy weapons, quantum computers, advanced shields. But they never faced mechanical systems because every civilization they encountered had moved beyond that technology. Across the room, Peter Hall, the old watchmaker, was working on something new. "Show him the other thing," he called out, not looking up from his work. Mary nodded and brought out a simple device, an old-style music box mechanism. "We found out they communicate using complex energy patterns, like advanced binary code. But their systems can't handle simple binary. It overloads them, like trying to run modern software on a calculator." Wilson watched as she connected the music box to a piece of enemy technology. The simple mechanical pins striking metal teeth created basic binary patterns. The alien crystal began to flicker erratically. "It's like a computer virus," she explained. "But instead of complex code, it's just simple on-off patterns. Their advanced systems try to analyze it and crash because it's too basic. They expect quantum calculations, not simple yes-no choices." Teams around the world were already working on the discovery. In Japan, they converted old telegraph machines to send binary signals that disrupted enemy communications. In Germany, mechanical computers from World War II were being modified to create patterns that confused enemy targeting systems. "But here's the most important part," Mary said, bringing up captured footage from the battle. "Look at their ships when they're hit by our weapons. They don't try to repair the damage. They can't. Their repair systems are looking for energy weapon damage, radiation effects, shield failures. They don't recognize simple holes or mechanical damage as things that need fixing." Wilson thought about the implications. "So when we hit them with kinetic weapons, the damage is permanent," she finished. "They literally don't know how to fix it. It's like they've forgotten that physical damage exists." Peter walked over, carrying his latest creation. It looked like a complex pocket watch, but inside was a mechanical binary generator. "We can use this to disrupt their systems. Simple mechanical patterns, repeated over and over. Their advanced minds can't handle something so basic." The discovery spread quickly through Earth's defenses. Ships were fitted with mechanical binary generators. Old computer systems, running the simplest possible code, were installed alongside the clockwork devices. Everything was designed to confuse and disrupt the enemy's advanced but limited minds. "It's like finding out your greatest enemy is afraid of simple math," Mary said, watching the crystal react to different mechanical patterns. "They're so advanced they've become vulnerable to the basics." Wilson stood, his mind already planning the next battle. "How fast can we adapt our weapons to use this weakness?" "The mechanical systems are ready," Peter answered. "We just need to add simple binary generators to everything. The simpler the pattern, the more it disrupts them." "Then let's give them a headache," Wilson said, picking up the music box mechanism. "Let's show them that sometimes the simplest solution is the best one." As they prepared their new weapons, Mary couldn't help but appreciate the irony. The enemy had evolved to fight the most advanced technology in the galaxy, only to be defeated by principles so basic they were taught in elementary school. The next battle would not be won with advanced technology, but with the simple clarity of yes and no, on and off, the basic language of all computers, spoken through gears and springs instead of circuits and chips. The final battle began not with a bang, but with the gentle ticking of 1,000,000 mechanical clocks. Earth's combined fleet, now 3 times larger than before, moved through space like silent ghosts. Each ship carried humanity's newest weapon, simple mechanical binary generators, ticking out patterns that scrambled enemy systems. Commander Wilson stood on the bridge of the upgraded Thermopylae, watching as the enemy fleet came into view. They had gathered their entire force, over 30 capital ships, their crystalline forms blocking out the stars. "They're here to end this," he said quietly. Dr. Roberts nodded beside him, checking the mechanical displays. "All ships report ready," she said. "Binary generators primed. Peter's device is working perfectly." The device was their secret weapon, a massive mechanical computer that Peter Hall had built, using nothing but gears, springs, and levers. It generated binary code so simple, it was like a nursery rhyme to human computers, but pure chaos to the enemy's advanced systems. "Begin Operation Final Stand," Wilson commanded. The signal flags flickered across the fleet. The battle opened with humanity's tried and true tactics. Kinetic weapons, railguns, and simple projectiles flew across space. But this time, they carried something new, small mechanical devices that broadcast simple binary patterns. The effect was immediate. Enemy ships began to move erratically, their perfect formations breaking apart. Their advanced minds, trying to process the simple patterns, started to fail. "They can't adapt," Mary said, watching through her telescope. "Just like a modern computer can't run programs written for a calculator. They're too complex to handle something so basic." The human fleet split into their attack groups, each one targeting specific enemy vessels. The space around Saturn's rings became a battlefield where humanity's oldest technology fought against the galaxy's most advanced minds. Peter's voice crackled over the mechanical intercom from the engine room. "Main binary generator at full power, sending out the simplest code possible. Just ones and zeros, over and over." The effect on the enemy was devastating. Their ships, unable to process the simple patterns, began to shut down systems. Some fired at random, their targeting computers overwhelmed by basic mathematics. Others drifted aimlessly, their advanced minds locked in endless loops trying to understand the simple code. "All ships, close range," Wilson ordered. "Hit them with everything we have." The human fleet moved in, their mechanical hearts beating steadily. Kinetic weapons fired, tearing through confused enemy shields. Fighters swarmed between the crystal ships, their simple guns punching holes that enemy repair systems couldn't even recognize. On the Thermopyla's bridge, Mary watched her displays as the enemy fleet began to break apart. "They're not just losing," she realized. "They're learning fear. These AIs, they've never failed before. They've never faced something they couldn't understand." The battle turned into a rout. Enemy ships, their mighty weapons useless, their advanced shields confused by simple binary, fell one by one to humanity's primitive arsenal. Some tried to flee, but their navigation systems were scrambled by the endless stream of ones and zeros flooding space. "Send the final signal," Wilson commanded, watching as the enemy flagship drifted helplessly. "All ships, execute Operation Checkmate." The entire human fleet activated their binary generators at once. The simple patterns, multiplied 1,000 times, created a wave of pure confusion for the enemy's advanced minds. Ships began to power down, their AI cores overwhelmed by mathematics a child could understand. The enemy flagship, last of its kind, managed one final transmission. The message, when decoded, was simple. "How? You are not advanced. You are not perfect." Mary sent back a reply using an old telegraph key. "We are human. We don't need to be perfect. We just need to be clever." The flagship's lights went dark, its mighty AI core shut down by simple binary code. Across the battlefield, the remaining enemy ships followed, their advanced minds unable to cope with humanity's primitive solution. As the dust settled, Wilson looked at his crew, scientists, soldiers, and engineers who had saved humanity by embracing the past. "Send word to Earth," he ordered. Tell them the humanity stands unbroken. Tell them we won by remembering who we are." The message went out, carried by simple light signals. Across Earth, mechanical tickers in command centers spelled out the news. Humanity had faced extinction and answered with unbreakable might, not with advanced technology, but with the simple brilliance that had taken them from caves to the stars. The galaxy would remember this day, not just as the day humanity survived, but as the day they proved that sometimes the mightiest weapon is the simplest one, and the strongest shield is the determination to never give up. For when all else faded, humanity had answered with unbreakable might, and that answer echoed across the stars.